Another year, another long list of players getting ready for the NFL draft from the Georgia Bulldogs. 11 dogs. Only three schools have more players. 11 dogs invited to the NFL draft combine. Who are those guys? Well, they are, in no particular order, Dejon Edwards, Kendall Milton, Lad McConkey, Marcus Rosemary Jackson, who's built up a lot of momentum here lately. You can read about it over on Dog Post. Brock Bowers, Marius Mims, Cedric Van Pran Granger, Zion Logue, Javon Bullard, Kamari Lassiter, Tyke Smith. That's the list of 11 guys. Now, will all 11 of those guys get drafted? They could. That is not out of the realm of possibility. The schools with the most invitees: Michigan at 18, Washington 13, Florida State at 12, Texas also at 11. Alabama, I believe, has 10, and Penn State has 10. So there's, when you look at everything, the most talented team this year probably won the college football playoff in terms of older talent. I think Michigan, to be honest with you, is fortunate they did not play Georgia, but whatever. All that said, I think that this is another good example of the fact that Georgia is getting where it wants to go. They are winning a lot of football games. They are sending guys to the NFL draft. Those guys, or to the combine, those guys are getting drafted at record number these last 2 years, to the largest 2-season run in NFL draft history. So, everything Kirby and company do at Georgia is not correct. Everything is not completely perfect. There's, obviously they get out coached sometimes. They sometimes, get a player picks another school, or, but the global, 40,000 foot view of things is that they are winning a lot, like a lot, and then they are getting players to live out their dream, and that dream is playing in the NFL. I mean, nobody's going to Georgia saying, "Man, I want to be a doctor." Maybe John Stinchcomb, not Matt, but John, right? No, uh, maybe like I think Ty Fricks is a doctor, although someone can correct me on that. There's not a lot of guys that are, that are going there to say, oh, I need to get ready for medical school, or I'm going to be an architect. Right? Most aspirations are to immediately after Georgia go to the NFL. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? I mean, that's the whole point. What are you doing all the work for? And I think that it's not out of the realm of question or possibility that that every single guy that gets signed at Georgia, that's their hope. I've been doing this long enough to know, and I talked to enough players, prospects, whoever. When you're 17 and 18 years old, you really don't know any better than to think that you can be a professional athlete. Now, as a person who's played not professional sports but played, collegiate athletics, two things. We are not all cut out to be professional athletes, okay? B, I'm not sure how many people would want to be professional athletes, because if we're being honest about it, it's manual labor, okay? And most of y'all don't want to do manual labor. Y'all want to go play. Play. That's not the same as work. And when you're a professional athlete, whether you're talking about baseball, tennis, whatever, swimming, I mean, that pool isn't going anywhere, right? I mean, Michael Phelps, you know, he had to work. He had to work. So these guys are all working. Javon Bullard is a great example of development in the program and so forth. But I do think, my criticism of this past year is Georgia didn't win the national championship when they had the best team. And, that's going to happen. From time to time, you're going to be the better team and not win. Part of that's sports, part of that's the coaches, and part of it's just, honestly, the bulk of it's sports, frankly. The other team gets to play too. But I think, when you take a look at where Georgia was at under Mark Richt, a person I admire and I think is, frankly, one of the best coaches in college football history, if you're being honest, um, they weren't where they needed to be in the grand scheme of things. They weren't in terms of football. They were not where they needed to be. They were not. The better way of putting it is they were not fulfilling their potential the way that it could have been or should have been. But Mark built on what Jim Donnan had done, and Jim Donnan had yanked Georgia out of kind of a mess for a while there in the early to mid '90s, and everything has been building towards this, but it's been a really slow build. I mean, we're talking about 30-ish years here that it's taken Georgia to get to where it's a machine. And certainly the vast majority of the credit goes to Kirby, no question. But I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. I mean, I think, this has been the best time ever to win in college football. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, the revenue has never been like this before. The exposure, and those two things go hand in hand. Excuse me. The exposure has never been like this. I mean, it's not the same. It's not the same sport necessarily, but when you're watching the NFL put up 123 million people watching the Super Bowl, 123 million people. That will definitely filter its way down to the SEC. I mean, you're going to see, in my opinion, higher viewership numbers in 2024 because, the SEC will be all in one place, not scattered all over the place, and it will get a lot of promotion from, ESPN and ABC. And so they've not had that lately. They've just not had that in a big way. But that will make the sport bigger. I mean, what's nuts is right now, college football has never been bigger than it is right now. I mean, college football was a regional sport, and you had regional powers like Georgia, Clemson, Nebraska, and they would occasionally play on the national stage. We don't have that anymore. We have huge brands, and those brands are Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Michigan are the top four. Okay, and then after that, you've got stuff, and I don't mean it like in a disruptive or nasty way. Then after that, you've got Notre Dame, LSU, people like that, and then you have layers below that, and then sometimes things come and go. But all of that said, now is the biggest and best time to win because there's never been more spotlight on the sport. And the spotlight on the sport allows these, for all of the accoutrements that surround this program to really take, flight. And you've got a world-class strength and conditioning group. I mean, they're outstanding and have been very good the whole time Kirby's been there. You've got world-class facilities. You've got everything. The folks in the NFL, their view of it is, Georgia is basically an NFL franchise. They just don't play in the league. And the players are younger. And they're not as good as, most NFL players on the whole. But they have exceptional players. I mean, you got to think about it. I was talking about this the other day. That 17 national championship game, that game had like Mecole Hardman, Roquan Smith, Tua, Jalen Hurts, Andrew Thomas. I mean, DeAndre Swift. There were a lot of different players. Nick, Sony. There were so many different NFL players scattered all over those teams, and it's not surprising that you see what's. This was the plan the whole time. Period. There's nothing confusing about this at all. There's nothing confusing about the success Georgia's having. They want it to happen. This isn't like Florida where they're not planning for it and all this. I'm not like trying to run Florida down. I'm saying what it is. They're not trying to win like Georgia is. You can take that however you want. And they have not been trying to win like Georgia for some time now. When Urban was down there, they were trying to win, let me tell you. And Georgia wasn't. Not the way Florida was. So that's the difference right now. And you're seeing that in these numbers. For instance, how many guys are going from Florida? Any idea? You want to take a guess? How many from Clemson? 6. Like, that's not going to get it done at the end of the day. You know how many are from Florida or invited to the Combine? The University of Florida, Georgia's arch rival. They have as many as Western Kentucky. They have as many as Holy Cross, as many as Troy, and as many as Marshall. That is embarrassing. And that is the difference. That is the difference. It's just not acceptable. And, you know, that South Carolina has more than doubled you up in guys being invited to the Combine. Like, that is not okay. There's nothing about that's okay. Kentucky has 3 times the amount of guys. Why do you think they're beating the Gators' brains in? So none of this is surprising to me. I mean, it just shows how good Georgia and Kirby are, and it shows why the top teams are winning. You know, the team that Georgia beat by 60 in the Orange Bowl, 12 of those guys are going to the Combine. Well, all 11 of Georgia's, well, not all 11. Amarius Mims and Brock Bowers did not play in that game. But those other players from Florida State, they could have played. They didn't. I don't think it would affect the outcome, but they didn't. And, you know, that's just what it is. So I thought it was a very curious thing to see. Another reaffirmation, if you will, of what Georgia's been doing under Kirby Smart. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon, y'all.